Hey guys, let me center that. Hey, um, so I've been listening to this band a lot. I just reviewed their latest album, and because of that, I've just been engrossed in their discography. And I think I like them more than I ever had because of it. I've dived into their discography multiple times, but never really enjoyed it as much as I did recently. And so I thought, why not? I just reviewed the latest album. I do tier lists every once in a while. Let's do a tier list. So today we're ranking Dream Theater's studio albums, um, including a change of seasons. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But yeah, let's dive right in. First up is The Astonishing. I gotta be fair. It's not an F, it's more of a D. And if it were, say, a double, let's keep it a double album. Let's make the songs longer. Let's make them more um not succinct, the opposite of succinct. And let's have more memorable choruses and stuff to grab your attention. This kind of feels like it meanders. And the thing about this kind of music is you have bands like Arion, right? That do this format so well. Even Devin Townsend has a couple albums, the Ziltoid albums, that pull this off way better than Dream Theater did. And I kind of want them to try again. Where this fails is that it's just hard to follow and feels way too long. The pacing is terrible. You have to be sitting there paying attention, reading the lyrics to be able to follow the plot. And you don't really want to, you know? Like, I never listen to this album and say, I want to sit down and pay attention to this album. With Scenes from a Memory, which we'll get to, you don't really have to sit down and pay attention to enjoy it. This one you kind of do. And I don't have the attention span for that. I don't have the patience for that. So, yeah, the reason why it's not an F is because the music and the melodies and the leitmotifs they use are really good. Their use of leitmotif throughout the piece is really cohesive and something that I really appreciate out of this album. And the only reason why I'd ever go back and listen to it is for that. And also if I'm just listening through all the albums. But there's no songs that I want to go back to and re-listen. I think every single other album, save one, which we'll get to, there's at least a song or two that I return to. This doesn't have that. So I don't know. I'd love for them to try again, but I understand why. I think a lot of people like this album the least, and kind of I've seen people hate this album. I don't hate it. It's not awful, but it's not that great. I only remember two melodies from the whole thing. I mean, granted, they're used over and over, so I come away remembering them, but I don't know. It's just not it. It's just a poor attempt at this format of music. Okay, next is Awake. And this might be this might be more controversial than not putting Astonishing in F tier. Awake is S tier. I have no clue what people think of this album because I hear nobody ever talk about it. I saw one video about how The Mirror is a cool song. Everybody loves 6 o'clock because of the keyboard and that driving drum part. But I hear nobody really talk about like the sweet, what's it, A Mind Beside Itself. I don't really hear people talk about Space Dyed Vest, which is fantastic ending. Scarred is so good. The way the mirror blends into Lie, the mirror references Space Dyed Vest, Lie references the mirror, makes me feel like that's another suite in there. Um, it's really cool what they did with this album, and I think it's their best of this era, and it's one of their best, period. And if you disagree, listen to it again. Listen to it again. It is phenomenal. There's so much reverb that gives it all this space. There's moments of like 80s power ballad. There's moments of really heavy stuff. Some of their heaviest stuff is on this album. And it's James LaBrie at his best, like range wise, melody wise. It's like, it's so tastefully done. And yeah, that's all I'll say about it. Listen to it if you disagree. Black Clouds and Silver Linings. I'm between B and C. I think I'll put it in C. Because I know, it's a Portnoy album. It's a Portnoy album. How is it at below even a B? I just don't care for this album. This is the album that made me apprehensive about the new album. Because this album is kind of eh. It's almost like you can tell Portnoy was about to leave or something was about to happen. Like, if I listened to this album brand new, I would have been like, are they going to break up? What's happening? What's going on? Count of Tuscany is all right. I like the middle section. I like the song melodically. The harmonies are really good. I think the concept's kind of lame. Like, I know it's based on a true story that really happened to somebody close to, I think Portnoy wrote it. I don't even remember. But the Shattered Fortress, I really like the Shattered Fortress, and that's all I really have to say about this album. It's kind of really. At best, it's Shattered Fortress. It's that middle section of the Count of Tuscany, but at worst, it's unmemorable and kind of boring. And once again, I only listened to it for curiosity's sake. What was on that album again? I'll listen to it. Stuff like that. Or if I'm doing a discography dive like I did recently. I don't find myself wanting to listen to this album otherwise. Change of Seasons. B. Now, I will say, I do like the pacing and the connectivity of Count of Tuscany better than the title track of this, but it's more musically interesting, and all the covers are kind of fun. Even though I only ever go back to the title track, I don't really care about the covers all that much. At least it's like neat. You know what? That's another thing. Is Black Clouds and Silver Linings has a disc 2, like a special edition thing where it's a bunch of covers, and I mean, I'm only familiar with like one or two of the songs on there, but it's still, you know, the songwriting is better than the songs they wrote. Um, it's still in C though, even with that. But I really only recently gave A Change of Seasons its attention, so it might have recency bias over Black Clouds, but it's in B. I'm leaving it in B. Next, Distance Over Time. This is my least favorite. Untethered Angel. The only thing I remember about that is the chorus because they sing the lyrics. Pale Blue Dot's probably the only song I actually enjoy off of this album. And, I don't see myself ever returning to it. I would never choose to listen to this album unless I was morbidly curious. Why is there a Breaking Benjamin song on this album? Paralyzed sounds like a Breaking Benjamin song. That's it. A dramatic turn of events. This was a dramatic turn of events. See, it's extremely unmemorable to me. I can't even recall the names of any of the songs on this album. I've listened to it multiple times, and it's just, I don't know. It was kind of good, but overall unmemorable. Nothing really to write home about. It's just kind of the only thing interesting about it is it's No More Portnoy. Next up, A View from the Top of the World. Only C. I'd put it in D if it weren't for answering the call and like half of the epic. The rest is lame, forgettable, unmemorable. But answering the call does not belong on this album. It's so good. It's a really good song for no reason. And the title track, A View from the Top of the World, is all right. Some of the moments feel like disjointed. Some of the moments feel deserved. So honestly, it's a 50-50 whether I like it or not, depending on what part of the song I'm listening to. But yeah, the singles were bland. I was not excited for this album, and then the album came out, and I was like, yeah, I don't. This is another reason why I thought Portnoy's return would not make any difference. I thought the band would continue being mediocre at songwriting, as good as they are technically, possibly the best they've been technically. Their songwriting skills between Systematic Chaos and the new album were subpar. I don't know. The self-titled album. I'm actually putting this in B. This is my favorite Mangini album. Honestly, this is my favorite. I think I've covered all the Mangini albums. This is my favorite. Illumination Theory is the best epic from the Mangini era. Looking Glass is a phenomenal song. I really like that one. But there's nothing bad. Again, it's a little unmemorable. I've thrown that word out a lot. Unmemorable. Because that's kind of the Mangini era. I don't know. I remember a couple moments, but what I remember the most is kind of being surprised that I liked it as much as I did. So I'm putting it in B. Next, Falling into Infinity. I'm putting that at the top of B. This album is not great. It's good. It's got a lot of great moments. You Not Me, Burning My Soul. It's a fun ride. And out of all these albums that I've ranked on in B and below, this is the first album that I've chosen to return to the whole thing. These are still B because overall I remember liking them, where this is more of a meh tier. Overall, I like these albums, but I remember this one the most out of this tier. It is wonderful. It's got great moments. Lines in the Sand is great. Trial of Tears, great ending. The melodies are so memorable. See? Memorable. That's the word of the day, is memorable. Yeah, this is besides Awake, obviously S tier, but this is really the first of all these albums that I choose to return to listen to the whole thing. Not just for curiosity's sake, but because I remember a lot from this album and I like it. Next, this one's a tough one. Images and Words, because I have such a fondness for this album. For the longest time, this was my favorite Dream Theater album. I don't know if I want to put it in S anymore. No, it belongs in S tier. It's just that good. Every single track, every single song is a banger. I like Awake a little more because it gets a bit heavier, but I mean, I don't know what to say. Every single song, it gets adrenaline pumping. It's just, and it's like perfect. It's the perfect was it eight songs? I just, it's it's just that good. And me putting Awake above this really speaks a lot for Awake too. All right. Scenes from a Memory. Let's just get it out of the way. It's top of S. This is my favorite. And I remember for a time I was kind of being a contrarian and being like, yeah, it's not even all that good. But then I just sat down and listened to it, gave it my full attention, and it kept my full attention. And I fell in love with the album. And every time I listen to it, I love it even more. I love playing along to it on the drums, as much of a pain that is. It's just so good on so many levels. It almost deserves its own tier, honestly. But I won't go further in. If you're watching this and you don't know this band, this is the album to check out. If you're watching this and you do know this band, which is probably all of you, not gonna lie, you probably understand. Even if you don't agree, you probably understand. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. Top 10, maybe top 25 favorite albums ever of all genres. It's just that good. I like it that much. Octavarium. I'm going to be called out for this. Top of B. I really love the title track. I love Sacrificed Sons. I love Panic Attack. I love Root of All Evil. Never Enough is fine. The last three tracks, going from 2 to 4, are a snooze fest. This album could have been just, instead of 2, 3, and 4, just make the second song like some major key ballad. Heck, leave these walls on there. And this would have been an A tier album. Put a better ballad style song. This would have been S tier. But I cannot, for the life of me, put this above a B tier because it is not. It is a bipolar album for me. You get the first track is really cool, it's badass, and then you get this lull in quality of songwriting. And it's just you know? And then you get the Panic Attack, and then all of a sudden the album's good again. I'm sorry. I know some people probably even like those tracks. I really don't. I The only reason I ever listen to those tracks is if I say, I'm going to listen to this album fully, or if I'm going to do an album playthrough on the drums, or if I'm like, oh, I have an hour and 20-minute drive, I'm going to just pop this album in the CD player and listen to it. Because if I skip those tracks, the timing of the drive is not going to go well with the album, so I have to listen to these tracks, but I'm not really enjoying myself listening to them. I can make a whole video dissecting why I find those tracks so boring, lame, and I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't like those tracks. A good album needs to be good throughout. That's like it's like if you hit it's like hiding like a vegetable in jello. Right? You like jello, you're eating the jello, it tastes great. You get a lump of broccoli. And some of you like broccoli. I don't. It tastes bitter to me. I'm not a fan. If I'm not going to say it's a delicious dish. In fact, you're lucky I'm putting it at the top B tier. Because of how good Octavarium's title track Epic is. It's above an album that I think has more consistency. Falling into Infinity is more consistently good than Octavarium, but it doesn't quite reach the heights of Octavarium. But it reaches low points that are low enough to bring it down to B tier. I'm moving on. That's my Octavarium rant. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Hard to explain why. I just like it. There's nothing wrong with this album. I just like it. And the self-titled Suite, their longest epic, because I wouldn't call Scenes from a Memory an epic. That's just a concept album. But this is technically an epic. Their longest epic. It's really good. Disappear is a heartbreaking track. You got The Glass Prison. You got Misunderstood is fine. The Great Debate, I think musically is fantastic. I'm not going to get into the lyrics because I feel like that'll be controversial. No matter what opinion I take, people will get mad. But I like that it kind of introduces two different sides and it asks a question. It's not telling you what to think on the topic. It's asking a question and letting your morals make the decision on whether what they're talking about is right or wrong. I don't know. It's really solid. It's really solid. And it's not an S tier, it's not a B tier, so it's an A tier. That's really my opinion. Systematic Chaos. It's not as consistent as 6 Degrees. I think it has higher heights, but it has lower lows. So I'm going to put it in A tier, but I'm putting it under 6 Degrees. I love In the Presence of Enemies. I love Repentance. Forsaken is a great track. The rest is like good. I remember enjoying them. I don't remember them too well, but I remember enjoying them really well. And then there's one song that is like fine, but like it sounds like a Muse song. It's really distracting. I don't feel like it belongs on the album. But that's way better than what I can say about Octavarium. I mean, it's just one song that feels like it doesn't fit, and it's not even that bad. It just, if you've heard the album, you probably know what song I'm talking about. I don't even remember the name, but it just sounds like a Muse song. I feel like the pacing of the album would be so much better without that track, but that might just be because I know Muse. If I didn't know Muse, I probably would be like, oh, this is neat, this is cool, they're trying something new. But it sounds like Muse. I'm sorry. Whatever. A. Oh boy. Train of Thought. Moment of Truth. It's going in S tier, but between which albums? It's not their best. It's tied with Awake for me. I'm calculating. It's above Awake. This album is their second best album, in my opinion. I know people who think it's their best. I have a few friends who agree that it's their best album, and I can understand. If Scenes from a Memory didn't exist, this would be their best by a really short margin, because I think Awake is also fantastic. Every song is a banger. Every song holds my attention really well. This is peak, like, concept album. This is peak, like, collection of songs style album. And they try their hands at both. And these are the best at either style. When Dream and Day Unite, the only album without James LaBrie. I only heard this recently because it wasn't on streaming for a long time. I like it more than A Change of Seasons. I don't like it more than Falling into Infinity. So I'm putting it in B tier. It's got Itse Jam. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's got The Killing Hand, which is surprisingly really good. It's got that first track. I forget the name, but I remember liking it, and the melody is kind of playing in my head. Yeah. That's really all I have to say about that album. And I'm a little winded from my Octavarium rant still. So we're going to finish things off with the latest album. If you've seen my video, you know I like it, but where does it belong? Top of A. I actually like this better than 6 Degrees because, I don't know, it just holds my attention better. It's a concept album. Even though it's thematic, it's still a concept album, which I appreciate, and I really like a concept album. So if it's about even musically with 6 Degrees, but being a concept album and working in those themes just kind of elevates it a little bit, you know? I still really like 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence almost as much. Also, recency bias. It just came out. My opinion may change in a year or two. But those are the albums. Let me know what you think. Tell me why Scenes from a Memory isn't as good as I think. Tell me why The Astonishing is actually their worst album. Tell me why Octavarium should be an S tier. Like, tear me a new a-hole. Please. I really appreciate you guys sticking around, watching these videos, enjoying my content. I'm not putting too much effort into being a content creator, but you know, I just like the content I want to make is music, and I'm kind of in a creative stage, not really ready to release any music I've created since my last release. So yeah. Anyway, what other bands should I rank? What other albums should I review? What's a song you think that would be cool for me to cover? And yeah. Thanks for watching. This is my tier list. Let me know what you think. Blah, blah, blah. Bye.